Thomas Edwards brought down his gavel with a sharp crack. The sound echoed through the quiet courtroom. He looked at the woman standing before him with barely a glance. "The fine stands at £350, Dr. Bennett," he said firmly. His voice was cold and professional. Emma Bennett stood tall despite feeling disappointed. She was a woman in her early 40s with kind eyes and a determined face. Her dark skin contrasted with the crisp white collar of her shirt peeking out from under her simple black blazer. "I understand, Your Honor," she replied politely. She gripped her handbag a little tighter. The fine would be difficult to manage this month with all her campaign expenses. Judge Edwards barely looked at her as he shuffled his papers. After 20 years on the bench, cases like these felt routine to him. Just another speeding ticket, just another excuse. "Next case," he called out, already forgetting about Dr. Bennett. As Emma walked out of the courtroom, she thought about what had just happened. She had been driving to the hospital when she got the ticket. A young patient was in crisis, and she had pushed the speed limit to get there faster. The patient had survived, but now she faced this fine. People nodded respectfully as she passed. A few whispered to each other. Emma was well known in the community. Just yesterday, she had announced she was running for governor. Her campaign signs were already appearing around town with her warm smile and the slogan, "Healthcare and Hope for All." Emma had grown up poor in this same town. Her mother had cleaned houses and worked night shifts to put food on the table. Through hard work and determination, Emma had become a doctor. Now she wanted to help others have the same chances she'd fought for. Outside the courthouse, her campaign manager Oliver waited for her. "How did it go?" he asked, falling into step beside her. "As expected," Emma replied. "Judge Edwards isn't known for his flexibility." Oliver shook his head. "Was he tough on you?" "Not tough exactly," Emma said thoughtfully. "It was more like I wasn't really there." 20 seconds, no eye contact, next case. They walked to her car in the parking lot. Campaign flyers peeked out from a box in the back seat. "That's the system we're trying to change," Oliver reminded her. "People being processed, not heard." Emma nodded. "That's exactly why I'm running. Everyone deserves to be seen and heard." As she drove home, Emma thought about Judge Edwards. He wasn't a bad man, from what she knew. He had a reputation for being fair, if cold. He followed the rules exactly. But sometimes, Emma believed, looking beyond the rules was necessary to see the full picture. At home, Emma made herself a cup of tea and sat at her kitchen table. Campaign materials were spread everywhere. Her small house was modest, she had chosen to stay in the neighborhood where she grew up rather than move to the wealthy part of town. Her neighbors were teachers, nurses, factory workers, and small business owners. Emma reviewed her speech for tomorrow's community meeting. She would be speaking about healthcare reform. Her mother had died waiting for treatment they couldn't afford. That pain still drove her forward every day. Her phone rang. It was Oliver again. "The local paper wants a statement about the ticket," he said. "They're running a story about it." Emma sighed. "Tell them I respect the law and paid my fine. This isn't about me versus the judge. It's about creating systems that work better for everyone." After hanging up, Emma walked to the window and looked out at her street. Children played basketball at the end of the block. An elderly couple walked their dog slowly along the sidewalk. This was why she was running for them, for her community. She didn't know that across town, Judge Thomas Edwards would soon be learning about her campaign. She didn't know their paths would cross again. All she knew was that tomorrow was another day to fight for what she believed in, a world where everyone mattered, where everyone was truly seen. The end that evening, Thomas sat in his study with a cup of tea growing cold beside him. The house was quiet. His wife Mary was reading in the next room. The only sound was the ticking of the old clock on the wall. Thomas picked up the local newspaper and began to read. His eyes moved lazily across the headlines until one made him stop. "Leading Dr. Emma Bennett announces run for governor." There on the front page was a photo of the same woman he had found in court that morning. Dr. Emma Bennett smiled confidently from the picture. She wore a simple blue blazer and looked directly at the camera with clear, determined eyes. Thomas read the article with growing interest. Dr. Bennett had an impressive background. She had grown up poor in their town, the daughter of a single mother who worked as a cleaner. Despite these challenges, she had earned scholarships, worked her way through medical school, and become one of the region's most respected doctors. The article described her work in poor communities, the free clinic she had helped establish, and her research on improving healthcare access. Her campaign would focus on healthcare reform and equal justice issues born from her own life experiences. "Mary," Thomas called to his wife. "Did I tell you about the speeding case today?" Mary came into the study, her reading glasses perched on her nose. "You mentioned a doctor who was speeding near the school. Why?" Thomas turned the newspaper toward her. "It was her. Dr. Bennett. She's running for governor." Mary leaned closer to look at the picture. "Well. And what was she like in court?" Thomas frowned, trying to remember. I barely looked at her. Just another speeding ticket. Fine, next case, move on." He felt strange admitting this now. "I didn't even properly see her," he added quietly. Mary sat down across from him. "Is something bothering you, Thomas?" He stared at the newspaper. "I'm not sure. The fine was correct according to law. She was speeding in a school zone. But," Mary prompted, "but I'm wondering how many people I've failed to truly see over the years. 20 years on the bench, thousands of cases, how many were more than just their offense?" Mary reached out and touched his hand. "You've always been fair, Thomas." "Fair, yes. But fair isn't always enough, is it?" He tapped the newspaper. "Look at her story. There's so much more to her than one speeding ticket." That night, Thomas couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about Dr. Bennett standing before him in court. Had he been too harsh? No, the fine was standard. Had he been unfair? No, the law was clear. But had he been human? Had he seen her as a person? He got up and walked to the window. The street below was quiet and dark. Thomas thought about his career. He had become a judge to help people, to serve justice. When had cases become just numbers to process? When had people become just names on a docket? The next morning at breakfast, Mary found him reading more about Dr. Bennett online. "She has quite a story," Thomas said. "Her mother died waiting for healthcare they couldn't afford. That's why she became a doctor. And now she wants to be governor," Mary added, pouring coffee. "I've been invited to the hospital charity dinner next week," Thomas said. "I wonder if she'll be there." Mary smiled. "Planning to apologize?" Thomas looked surprised. "I didn't do anything wrong." "No," Mary agreed. "But sometimes it's not about wrong or right. Sometimes it's about connecting with people." Throughout the following days, Thomas found himself thinking about Dr. Bennett. He read her campaign positions. Many aligned with values he held but rarely spoke about. He began to notice how he handled cases in his courtroom. Was he rushing through them? Was he seeing the whole person? On Wednesday, a young man stood before him for a minor offense. Instead of processing the case quickly, Thomas asked questions. He learned the man was working 2 jobs to support his sick mother. It changed nothing about the legal outcome, but it changed how Thomas felt about his work. As the hospital charity dinner approached, Thomas felt a strange nervousness. He wasn't sure why meeting Dr. Bennett again mattered to him. Perhaps it was a chance to see her differently, not as case number 47 of the day, but as a person with dreams, struggles, and a vision for their community. Thomas didn't know it yet, but this meeting would change both their lives in unexpected ways. The annual hospital charity dinner was held at the Grand Hotel, the fanciest place in town. Thomas arrived wearing his best suit. He felt uncomfortable at these events but knew they were important for his position as judge. The large room glowed with soft lighting. Round tables covered in white cloths filled the space. Well-dressed people stood in groups, talking and laughing. Waiters moved between them carrying trays of drinks. Thomas took a glass of water and stood near the refreshment table. He nodded to people he knew but didn't join any conversations. His eyes kept searching the room. Then he saw her. Dr. Emma Bennett stood across the hall, surrounded by a small group of people. She wore a simple dark blue dress that looked elegant but not flashy. Unlike many guests who seemed to be just making small talk, Emma was speaking with real passion. People were leaning in to hear her words. "We need medical clinics in every part of our state," she was saying. "Not just in wealthy areas. Every child deserves healthcare no matter where they live." People around her nodded. Thomas couldn't hear everything from where he stood, but he could see how interested everyone was in what she was saying. She wasn't just talking politics. She truly cared. As the dinner was announced, people began moving toward their tables. Thomas saw Emma saying goodbye to the group around her. Without planning it, he found himself walking toward her. "Dr. Bennett," he said when he reached her. His voice sounded stiff even to his own ears. He extended his hand. "We met under different circumstances recently." Emma turned toward him. Recognition flashed in her eyes, followed by surprise. "Judge Edwards," she said, shaking his hand. Her grip was firm and warm. "I wanted to." Thomas paused, choosing his words carefully. "I wanted to apologize if I seemed dismissive in court the other day." Emma tilted her head slightly, studying him. "That's an unexpected thing for a judge to say." "Perhaps. But I've been thinking about how we judges sometimes process cases without really seeing the people before us." A small smile appeared on Emma's face. "Thank you for saying that, Your Honor. Though I did deserve the ticket. I was speeding." "Yes, the law is clear on school zones," Thomas agreed. "But everyone deserves to be heard properly." The dinner bell rang again, more insistently. "Which table are you at?" Emma asked. Thomas checked his place card. "Table 7. "I'm at table 8, she said. "Perhaps we could talk more after dinner?" Thomas nodded, surprised at how pleased he felt. "I'd like that." During dinner, Thomas found himself looking over at table 8. Emma was engaged in conversation with everyone around her. She listened as much as she talked. She laughed easily. The people at her table seemed drawn to her natural warmth. Thomas's own dinner conversation felt stiff and formal in comparison. The bank manager on his left talked about golf. The hospital administrator on his right discussed budget concerns. Thomas answered politely, but his mind kept drifting to the conversation waiting after dinner. When the meal ended and people began moving around again, Thomas saw Emma excuse herself from a conversation and walk toward the doors leading to the hotel garden. He followed her outside. The garden was lit with small white lights in the trees. The spring air was cool but pleasant. Emma stood looking at a small fountain, her back to the party inside. "It gets a bit loud in there," she said without turning around. Somehow she knew it was him. "Yes," Thomas agreed, moving to stand beside her. "I've never been comfortable at these events." "Really? I would have thought judges enjoy formal gatherings." "Some do," Thomas admitted. "I prefer simpler settings." They stood in silence for a moment, watching the water splash in the fountain. "Your campaign," Thomas finally said. "I read about it. Your focus on healthcare reform. It's impressive." Emma turned to look at him. "Thank you. But I suspect you didn't follow me out here to discuss my campaign platform." Thomas smiled slightly. "No. I wanted to ask, what made you decide to run for governor? It's a big step from being a doctor." "Is it?" Emma asked. "Both are about helping people. As a doctor, I can help one patient at a time. As governor, I could help thousands." Their eyes met, and for the first time, Thomas truly saw her not as a case number or a candidate, but as a person with dreams as valid as his own. I think I'd like to hear more about that, he said sincerely. And as the party continued inside, they began a conversation that would change them both. The quiet of the garden wrapped around them like a blanket, creating a small private world away from the noisy charity dinner. Thomas and Emma found a bench near the fountain where they could sit and talk. Tell me about yourself, Thomas said. Not the campaign version. The real story. Emma looked at him thoughtfully before answering. I grew up not far from here. Just across the tracks in Riverdale. Thomas nodded. Riverdale was the poorest part of town. Few people made it out. My mother raised me alone, Emma continued. She cleaned houses during the day and worked at the hospital cafeteria at night. Sometimes we had electricity, sometimes we didn't. I studied by candlelight when bills couldn't be paid. Thomas tried to imagine this strong, educated woman as a child reading textbooks by candlelight. How did you become a doctor from there? He asked. One teacher believed in me. Mrs. Wilson in 10th grade. She stayed after school to help me prepare for exams. She drove me to university open days. Emma smiled at the memory. She told me I could be anything if I worked hard enough. She was right, Thomas observed. Emma shook her head. Hard work matters, but it's not enough on its own. I needed help. Scholarships. Mentors. A community that lifted me up. She paused, looking directly at Thomas. That's why I get frustrated when people act like success is just about personal effort. Systems matter. Support matters. Thomas felt a twinge of discomfort. Wasn't that what he believed? That people succeeded or failed based on their own choices? What about your mother? He asked. She must be proud of you. Emma's face changed. Sadness crept into her eyes. She died while I was in medical school. A treatable condition that went too long without care. She couldn't afford proper treatment, and by the time she qualified for assistance, it was too late. I'm sorry, Thomas said softly. That's why healthcare reform matters to me, Emma said. It's not abstract. It's my mother. It's thousands of mothers and fathers and children. Thomas nodded slowly. May I share something with you? Emma gestured for him to continue. I grew up working class too. Not as difficult as your childhood, but my father worked in the factory and my mother was a school cook. I was the first in my family to go to university. What made you become a judge? Emma asked. Thomas smiled slightly. Would you believe I wanted to help people? I thought the law was about justice, about making things fair. And isn't it? Sometimes, Thomas admitted. But over time, the system. He searched for words. It's easy to get caught up in procedures. In rules. To forget there are real people with real lives standing before you. The admission felt strange to say out loud, but also freeing. When did that change for you? Emma asked. Thomas thought about it. It happened so slowly I barely noticed. One case becomes 10, becomes 100, becomes thousands. You develop shortcuts. Categories. This type of offense gets this response. Efficiency becomes more important than connection. Emma was quiet for a moment. That happens in medicine too. Patients become conditions. Room 4 is the broken leg. Room 6 is the heart problem. How do you avoid that? Thomas asked with genuine curiosity. I make myself stop. Take 3 deep breaths before entering each room. Remember, this person has a name, a family, fears, and hopes. Emma's voice was gentle. It's not easy. Some days I fail. But I try. Thomas thought about his courtroom. When was the last time he had taken even one deep breath before hearing a case? Your campaign, he said. Do you really think you can change things? Not alone, Emma replied. But together with others who care. Yes, I do. Change happens one conversation, one policy, one person at a time. Thomas realized the party inside had grown quieter. We should probably go back in. Emma nodded, but neither of them moved immediately. Thank you, Thomas said finally, for sharing your story with me. Thank you for listening, Emma replied. Really listening. As they walked back toward the hotel, Thomas felt something he hadn't experienced in years: hope. Hope that systems could change. Hope that he could change. Before they reached the door, Emma paused. Judge Edwards? Thomas, please. Thomas. Would you be willing to speak with me sometime about judicial reform? I'd value your perspective. The old Thomas would have declined instantly. Change was risky. Speaking with a political candidate was inappropriate. But the Thomas who had listened to Emma's story heard himself say, I'd be honored. That night, driving home, Thomas knew something important had shifted. He wasn't sure where this new path might lead, but for the first time in years, he was eager to find out. The 6 months passed like a swift river. The town buzzed with excitement on election night as votes were counted. People gathered in homes, pubs, and community centers to watch the results. At the Central Hotel ballroom, Emma's campaign team huddled around screens showing the numbers. The race was tight. Emma stood quietly to one side, watching the figures change. She wore a simple blue dress with a small pin showing her campaign logo, a rising sun. Thomas sat at home with Mary, both staring at their television. They had never been so interested in an election before. Look at the numbers from Riverdale, Mary said, pointing at the screen. Emma's winning big there. Thomas nodded. But Hampton Heights is going to her opponent. Hampton Heights was the wealthy area where many judges, lawyers, and doctors lived. As midnight approached, the final counts came in. Emma Bennett had won by just 3,000 votes. She would be the new governor. The ballroom erupted in cheers. People hugged and cried. Emma stood on stage, waving to her supporters with tears in her eyes. She thanked everyone who had worked on her campaign and the voters who believed in her vision. Meanwhile, Thomas turned off the television with a smile. She did it, he said to Mary. She actually did it. In the weeks after the election, Thomas went about his work in the courthouse with a new approach. He took time with each case, making sure to look people in the eye. He asked questions about their lives. The law remained the same, but the way he applied it had more heart. One morning, his clerk brought in a letter with the governor's official seal. Thomas opened it with surprise. Inside was an invitation to meet with Governor Bennett at her office. The following week, Thomas walked into the governor's building feeling nervous. The security guards checked his ID and directed him to the elevators. Everything looked fresh and important. Emma's office was large but not fancy. Books filled the shelves. Family photos sat on her desk alongside neat stacks of papers. When he entered, Emma rose to greet him with a warm smile and a handshake. Judge Edwards, thank you for coming. Congratulations, Governor Bennett, he replied. It's an honor to be invited. Emma gestured for him to sit. I've been thinking about our conversation at the hospital dinner. About seeing the whole person, not just their offense or their illness. Thomas nodded. That conversation changed how I approach my work. I'm glad, Emma said. Because I have a proposal for you. She handed him a folder. I'm creating a judicial reform commission focused on empathy and fairness in our courts. I'd like you to lead it. Thomas stared at the folder, then at Emma. Me? But I'm the one who fined me for speeding. Emma smiled. Exactly. You understand both sides, the importance of laws and the importance of seeing people as more than their mistakes. Thomas opened the folder and read the outline of the program. It would train judges to consider the whole context of cases, to search for solutions beyond simple punishment, to recognize how poverty and lack of opportunity affected choices. This is ambitious, he said finally. Yes, Emma agreed. Change usually is. People will question your choice. Appointing the judge who once fined you. Emma leaned forward. That's the point, Thomas. Our story shows what's possible when people look beyond first impressions. When they truly see each other. The next day, they announced the commission at a press conference. Reporters filled the room, cameras flashing as Emma and Thomas stood side by side. One reporter called out, "Governor Bennett, why choose Judge Edwards to lead this initiative when he once fined you in court?" Emma smiled. "Judge Edwards and I met when he gave me a speeding ticket. What could have stayed a negative moment became a turning point. That's what I want for our state, to transform challenges into chances for growth." Thomas stepped to the microphone. "The governor taught me that true justice isn't just about following rules. It's about seeing people clearly, with compassion and understanding. Sometimes the person you judge quickly might be the one who helps you become better." Over the next 2 years, their work changed how courts operated across the state. Judges received training in understanding poverty, addiction, and mental health. New programs offered alternatives to fines people couldn't afford. What began as a simple speeding ticket had grown into something that helped thousands. All because two people took time to truly see each other. On the anniversary of their first meeting in court, Thomas sent Emma a small gift, a candle with a note, for all the children still studying by candlelight. May they find their way to bright futures, with our help. Emma placed it on her desk, a reminder that small moments can change everything when we open our hearts to others. The end.